Well, let's hop in
Yeah.
here. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute up for the show today. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me. It's been nice to have this on my calendar.
Yes, absolutely. So let's begin with, in the news yesterday, there was a report. Was it up by Yellowstone where somebody got attacked by a bison?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
that was in Yellowstone Park. I saw the footage yesterday. It's been all over the news coverage, and this one's a little bit unusual. We're always preaching safety to the many visitors that come and visit the park in Yellowstone. You're supposed to keep at least 25 yards from the bison and other animals, and in this case, it seems like that visitor was really trying to keep a safe distance, but it's a really good reminder that it's a wild animal.
Yep.
Wasn't being predictable. I don't know why it targeted that particular grandfather who seemed to be trying to avoid it. But it does happen, and it's a good reminder that the bison is a big animal.
Yeah.
It's fast, it can be aggressive. I think they're in the middle of their rut right now, and it was clearly agitated. So, unfortunate incident. I hope the guy's okay.
Yeah.
But I think that was a good wake-up call that Yellowstone, it's visitor friendly, but I mean, there are unpredictable wild animals, and the bison's one of them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, with any animal, whether it's a dog or a domesticated animal, at any point you don't know what can possibly happen with an animal.
Yeah.
There's any level of provoking that has nothing to do with maybe you just being in the room. So it was interesting because I watched it too, and it seemed like he was really far away, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden it was like the animal came up. But I just brought it up because it was timely to us talking right now. But I want to get into your role before we get into the center. I want to get into your role as the CEO and executive director. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids at career day and they wanted to know what your job is, what do you do? Why are we here right now? How do you explain your role and what your mission is?
All right. So our mission is really connecting people with the stories of the American West. My role is to make that happen for as many audiences and as many communities as possible. So we're using that in the context of what I would say is a more traditional museum model. But the biggest challenge for a director like me or any director around the country is museums have been around for hundreds of years. But what we're trying to do is really connect with those audiences that expect something different in this digital age. Things move quickly, people's attention spans are short. So my job is solving the problems about how to get all of our collections out to the public, which means we have art, we have natural history, we have indigenous cultures, we have, of course, Buffalo Bill, we have firearms collections. So I've got to figure out how to get that out to our audiences from a really small town here in Cody, Wyoming, way up in the northwest corner. We're near Yellowstone, but we're not near any major urban center. So, how do we do that from an isolated area and make things really exciting and engaging for people? So, that's my challenge day to day. And then, of course, there's always the logistics of working with a great staff. We have about 63 full-time people, and making sure that people know we're here. Small town, huge organization. Got
Yeah.
over 150,000 square feet of exhibits. But in many cases, people don't actually know that we're here. They see us because they're coming to Yellowstone National Park. So that's my number one challenge, increasing the visibility, making sure our museum model is still relevant in 2026 and beyond.
And it's interesting because this year we're celebrating the 250 years of democracy in America. It seems to be a real christening time of looking back at the beginnings. This has to be, I would imagine, an opportune time to be able to expose people to that American West.
Yeah, it really is. And the West is so hot right now. I mean, you've seen that. Everyone's seen that. You've got the docu-series ranging from Yellowstone to all the spin-offs. And we've always known there's something special here, right? Well, I mean, I've lived here for over 30 years, not originally from the West, but it's got me. I'm not leaving. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
so transplant. But really, the West today is it's something that's changed, obviously. In 1776, Wyoming was just a territory of Spain. It didn't become a state until 1890. You look at Yellowstone Park. President Grant established Yellowstone in 1872. So we're really dealing with a time frame that's a little bit different in terms of the Great Plains and what was going on in 1776. But you're right, it is our chance to celebrate and look at where we've come from in the history of America. But it's given us a chance to look at history a little bit differently. Museums are pretty predictable, right? You figure you go to a museum, you're going to see maybe a little more static exhibit, lots of dates, perhaps people telling you through labels or maybe some videos about what to think. 250, when we started talking about this about 4 years ago, gave us a different opportunity to look at the history, not only of Wyoming, but of the Great Plains, of the American frontier in the context of America. And so that's what we're doing with this Buffalo Nation exhibit that's opening up on August 22nd to the public. So we're looking way back. We're looking even further back than 1776, what was going on here in the plains in terms of humans, American bison, and just basically the landscape in general. So it is some celebration, but it's also a lot of thinking about where we go next after looking at all the history that's come ahead of us as humans. So good opportunity for some self-reflection too.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think especially when it comes to, especially with kids and educating, we are going to understand where we're at or where we're going if we don't know what the past is. If we don't go back to the roots, we don't go back to the beginnings. I even think about with Pittsburgh, immediately I'm a jazz guy and Mary Lou Williams comes up, and then you got Fred Rogers and you got the Steel Town, you got this blue collar moxie. So I'm curious, take me back to your beginnings. How did you evolve to this place that you're at now from Pittsburgh to Cody, Wyoming, and leading this exhibit? How did this happen?
Yeah, and it's a long, strange story. And I always tell um, any of the younger colleagues who want to get in the museum business. And how did you get started in this? So, first of all, I was one of those strange teenagers who always knew what I wanted to major in college, right? I'm like, I'm going to go to college, going to major in art history. Probably every parent's worst nightmare, maybe other than visual arts or something like that. Um, okay, what are you going to do with an art history degree? And interestingly, there's some Pittsburgh ties to the West. I first started coming out to Wyoming and was introduced to the American West when I was about 9 years old. My family made the big trip out. We drove from Pittsburgh all the way to near Sheridan, Wyoming, to the oldest working guest ranch in the United States called Eaton's Ranch. Lo and behold, the Eaton brothers were from Pittsburgh. All right. So that was the connection. Fell in love with Wyoming, fell in love with the American West, graduated from high school, went to college, art history degree, graduated. I didn't have a job. All my friends who were um, econ majors and they were getting recruited, had jobs. I had no job. So moved out to Oregon, thought I'm going to go even further west, see what's out there. Spent a few years not working arts related jobs and started sending out letters and getting a lot of rejections for anything from museums to galleries. Happened to land an internship here at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, working on it's called the Catalog Raisonné, which is basically it's a full look at any artist's life work, and that was for Frederick Remington. Frederick Remington is one of the biggest, most well-known historic Western artists, along with Charlie Russell. Worked on that, intended to do it for 6 months. Thought I'll do this internship and I'll move on. 30 some years later, still here. Learned the museum business from the ground up here in Cody from some of the best directors and best personnel in the United States. And got into the curatorial realm. Went back to school, got my master's degree from University of Oklahoma. Um, in the meantime, got married, had a couple kids, worked. I was the curator of the Plains Indian Museum and really started to get into museum administration because I found that I had a talent for working with people and solving problems in museums to get the collections out to people using the limited resources we have as a nonprofit. So I was recruited to be the director here, it's close to 5 years now, coming out of COVID. Proud to say I'm the first female director we've had here at the organization. We're over 109 years old.
Wow.
So, and I have the right last name for it as well with West.
Yes.
Been very convenient,
Yes.
very catchy. So that's my story. Always had a passion for art history, visual arts. And we've got 5 museums here and a library. So I'm able to really put that base scholarship and knowledge, but also a lifelong passion for museums to work now as the director.
So, coming from Pittsburgh, they're vastly different places. Cody, Wyoming, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, just different landscapes, different histories. What was the most surprising pieces of history that you learned going to Cody, Wyoming, being involved with the Buffalo Bill Center? What surprised you that you didn't know that just was like, wow, I didn't realize that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. So first of all, the history here, when you look at the East Coast especially, the history here seems so much newer. I mean, you think about, and I first started realizing this when, if you go to an antique store in Wyoming versus an antique store in Pittsburgh or on the East Coast, the history is very different. Everything seems just newer here because, of course, you had people here. You had indigenous tribes here up to, close to 10 to 20,000 years ago on the Great Plains. But really, the history started with the frontier. So after Lewis and Clark, when you have non-indigenous people moving across the West. So first of all, it was the newness. The second thing that struck me um, was the commonalities between Pittsburgh and also Cody. And I call it the grit factor. Okay, so being from Pittsburgh, you've got this really strong sense of pride about the grittiness and the blue collar and all of the hard work that's associated with the history of Pittsburgh. And I take great pride in that and being from Pittsburgh. But I also see that in Cody and especially in the Western experience. I mean, clearly, this is a town that came up from an area that's basically high desert. There's a river running through it, and you really have to have a sense of toughness to live here now, even in the wintertime, but especially back then when there was really nothing here. So that's the second item. The third thing that surprised me was the influence of Eastern money on a small town like Cody. And a lot of people don't know much about our history, but Buffalo Bill, he was the consummate showman. He had the shows all over the nation, all over the world. He was trying to preserve what he saw was the changing way of the American West. He died in 1917. His niece, Mary Jester Allen, established the Buffalo Bill Memorial Association. The very first monument of Cody that was put up was made and sponsored by Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. Okay? Whitney, as in, this is the same Whitney as the Whitney Museum in New York. She's the person who purchased the land here for the current center of the West. And it was a lot of the Eastern money that came out to the dude ranches around here that really started that love of the West with the arts and all of the different cultural elements, ranging from fashion to entertainment. So that's the Eastern money part of it that I really didn't realize existed until I started working here.
So, Yellowstone has to be one of the top drawing parks, national parks in America, correct?
It is, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I don't know how it relates to the other one. I mean, it's had some amazing surges, especially COVID and post-COVID. I think Grand Canyon is probably the
Yeah,
top.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always heard that Yellowstone is the top, and my point is that you have a huge influx of people coming through.
We do.
What would be your elevator pitch right now for them to come see Buffalo Nation, to be a part of this starting August 22nd? What is your
Yeah.
pitch to say this is something that's essential for you to understand on your visit to one of the premier parks in this country?
Yeah. What I would say is Cody, Wyoming, and the Buffalo Bill Center, we have art. We have firearms collections. We have Indian collections. We have natural history. And of course, we have Buffalo Bill. What I would say to people is don't let the size of the town fool you. We are one of the foremost Western institutions that's all about the West. And if you're going to come to Yellowstone, you're literally 50 miles from Cody and the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. To really experience the true West, and this isn't just some tourist trap, this is the true West in terms of place and collections and artifacts and passion. And that's also about the bison. The bison is one of those species that has a draw, whether it's spirituality, it's in our arts, it's in our culture, it's in our popular culture too. People need to see this and not miss it if they're really going to understand what the West is about. It's right here. And I think even though people might not have heard of us, they are never disappointed when they come to visit.
Yeah.
Hands down, first thing people always say is, I wish I'd come here sooner and I wish I had more time. Um, so that's what we like to sell in terms of our visitors,
Yeah.
and we don't disappoint.
So let me ask you this. An exhibit is a lot like a art gallery. You're going to have your favorites. There's going to be things that are going to jump out at you. When you look at this exhibit, what's your favorite part of it? What's something that really jumps out that is particularly hits your fancy?
Yeah. Cool. What I like most is this is not your typical boring march along chronological exhibit. It truly highlights each of our five collections, okay? But it's not a potpourri. It's very intentional in talking about how the bison has crossed different cultures, how it's crossed different eras of time, and also how it's appealing to different generations. My favorite part of this exhibit is what we call the storyteller kiosks. So we've got um, different videos of people ranging from a Yellowstone National Park ranger to an Eastern Shoshone tribal member who is working on the bison restoration here in Wyoming. And it's this engaging feature where you walk up to this kiosk and you can ask the person questions. And it's this algorithm, and they'll answer your questions and give you an experience based on their perspective. That's one of my favorite tech parts. The other favorite part that I love is the fact that we have some fun with this exhibit. We have a natural history section that kids can get down on the ground. They can wallow around in it's called a buffalo wallow. It's some beanbag chairs. They can touch different pieces of buffalo hide and fur. There's also a dung station. So you can look at a buffalo patty and see what's going on. What are they eating? How does this relate to their different ecosystems and their biology? So we range from the scholarly to really having a fun experience where adults and kids can do their own thing. And I like to say that we don't want the exhibit to be intimidating. We want it to be welcoming and unexpected. And that's our big emphasis is on reach, but also innovation.
So, in your personal narrative, what do you miss the most about Pittsburgh, and what do you like the best about Cody?
Ah, so Pittsburgh, I miss the sports events.
Yeah.
That's the best sports town around. We don't have that here. Closest is really Denver. I'm still a diehard Steelers fan and Penguins fan, and I miss that terribly. What I love about Cody, though, is sense of small town and really sense of camaraderie with everybody that lives here. First couple weeks when I moved here, there was a little grocery store, and I lived down the street. Came and got my groceries, forgot my wallet, and the cashier said, "I'll just come back later. You can come back and go get your wallet, and you can pay me, when you come back." I thought, where am I? So it still has that small town feel. And I think that's a big part of it is really the pride that people have here in Cody about where we've come from, but also to make sure that you still know your neighbors uh, and are respectful of one another too. So we have a lot of that here in Cody. So that does replace the absence of fantastic sports teams.
Yeah, coming from Kansas City, I hear about that all the time. There's that level of Mayberry, that level of community, that kind of smaller town feel that's always so good to delve into. So Buffalo Nation starts August 22nd,
It
and
does.
the Buffalo Bills Center of the West is always there. If anybody wants to get tickets, they want to visit any of the good information, the good business, where's the best place for people to go?
Yeah. The website, centerofthewest.org. Our tickets can be purchased online, but you can also just walk up to the door. We're open 7 days a week, 8 to 6 right now through September. Admission is good for 2 days. I made the comment earlier that people always say, I don't have enough time. I mean, again, acres and acres of gallery spaces here. You need at least a day, but preferably 2 days to visit. So centerofthewest.org. It also covers all of our events. Buffalo Nation opens to the public on August 22nd. We just released the catalog for that exhibit too. That's available online as well, and it's beautiful. Fantastic souvenir, even if you can't make the exhibit. And the content of Buffalo Nation is so important. It's not going to end in 2026, even though it is a 250 commemoration. We're going to have it up for all of 2027 as well.
Okay.
It's that important and it's that lasting. So if you can't come see us this summer, I encourage people to visit next year.
And I will make sure to make it easy and put links in the show notes. So let's end on a high note here. Let's
Yeah.
say you could get into a time machine and go back to that frontier of the West in the beginnings, and you could see one event. You could see something happen before your own eyes. What would be the one thing that you would love to see unfold in real time?
There's so many different historical events. That would be tough to choose. What I would like to do is just create a moment if I were able to stand on um, a bluff and look down on a true wild herd of grazing buffalo. That would be my moment.
Yeah,
No railroads, no sound, nothing. Just watching the animals do their things on the open prairie
yeah,
would be my choice.
that'd be wonderful. Rebecca, this has been great. Thank you so much for talking about the
Yeah,
exhibit, the center, your history. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
terrific. Thank you so much. And I've
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
me too.